Hi, everyone. My name is James Tian. Welcome to NAB 2026, and I'm delighted to have with me here Michael Kammes from Kiko Media, Senior Director of Innovation. How are you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing great. NAB is Christmas and New Year's and my birthday all in one. I get to talk to some of the most intelligent people in the industry. We get to talk about new products, so I can see other people get just as jazzed as I do about new tech releases. So I look forward to this every year.
Yeah, and it totally shows. Well, before we go into there, tell us about Kiko Media.
Sure. Kiko Media is actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, 25 years. Kiko Media has 160 employees, and we focus on broadcast, AV, and post-production, not only the consulting side of it, but also the sales, integration, installation, and then support after it. And we do that all across the United States. I think we have 10 physical locations now.
Across all of your business divisions and all the services that you guys provide, I imagine your verticals, your customer segments are everything that we can think of, right? Traditional television, corporations, education, houses of worship, government. Am I missing anything else in that spectrum?
Well, the emerging creator economy.
Okay.
Right. We also talk about sports, whether it be, at the major levels, or we're talking collegiate, talking high schools, those kinds of things. And then even some of the more emerging, like healthcare, right? Because you need cameras in healthcare, So we've been expanding into a lot of other verticals, and that also means getting that domain expertise. So we're pulling engineers from all walks of life and all backgrounds to help us execute on that.
Amazing. Across all those spectrums of verticals, where do you see the most growth? Which segments excite you the most?
Well, I mean, let's just say AI and then put that aside, because that's kind of the easy answer. We're seeing, and I'm sure everyone does this on their phone, everyone does this at home, you don't delete stuff, right? You're saving more and more things. So that's great. Everyone is saving things, but then how do you find those things, right? So it's storage and then discovery. Those are the big things. But all of that is reliant on an infrastructure that can handle that. And that's where we're seeing the move from SDI to obviously IP workflows. So no more 1 gig networks, right? We're looking 10, 100 gig networks, and being able to route video to multiple places, as well as audio in multiple formats to different places. And so that's probably the biggest change, is moving from an SDI infrastructure to IP.
That is a perfect segue. The transition from linear baseband to IP is something I'm so excited that our industry is embracing, right? The AV industry did it, 20 plus years ago, and they've never looked back. And it's picking up steam. I want to say still 80% of traditional broadcast is running SDI, but 2110 IPMX and obviously NDI and SRT is catching up. And I know that our industry, once they embrace it, will never look back as well.
Oh, without a doubt, the folks that are going all in on IP, it makes sense. But we also have to understand there's legacy, right? There's legacy infrastructures, and it's not just the cable that's pulled at the broadcaster or that's pulled at the facility. You have the cameras that are out in the field. You have the trucks that are out on the road. All these other parts that are based around SDI. And while it would be great to say, oh, it's time to upgrade this year, the sales cycles don't afford that. So there has to be a measured approach to say, let's introduce a router maybe that can handle both baseband and IP, and then bifurcate things to some extent and kind of grow into it. And then when it's time for that facility refresh, that's when we'll go IP. And then we'll have an SDI contingency for some of those legacy stuff. But it's a very measured approach to accomplish that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And in fact, our first PoE light, right? So we developed PoE technology 2 years ago. It has quickly just really blossomed in all the ways that we wanted to, right? And for audiences that don't know, our power over Ethernet lighting means a single RJ45 cable is simultaneously powering and controlling the lights. And because they're low voltage and low permit, or they're low voltage, they don't require a high voltage permit. So they can be installed by systems integrators without having to hire an electrician, get a architected, get the electric blueprints in your building. go through a whole city permitting process, and often those frictions could completely just end a project before you even started.
And I have a perfect example of that. At our podcast studio at Keycode Media, we're using Ikan lights. And we're using drop ceiling, right? You find drop ceiling in a lot of buildings. And to your point, we don't have to put a grid.
Yeah.
We don't have to get permits. We can get clips and put the lights up there and then run the single Ethernet cable. But what's even more amazing than that is it's not just on or off for power, right? Through your web interface, we can change the universe it's on. We can change the DMX channel. And so we now can set up routines that are all going through one cable.
Yeah.
So no permit, hangs from a drop ceiling, and we can control it all through a browser.
Yeah.
And it's made the building of the podcast studio just very easy, and almost anyone can walk in and hit a button, and the routines are triggered and the lights are on.
Yeah, perfectly said, Michael. Thank you for being such an advocate of our PoE technology. The first iteration of the light, we actually built it to be fully legacy compatible. So even though it's a PoE light, even though a single RJ45 cable is powering that light, it still had DMX 512 loop through.
Okay.
And it still has, a DC AC power supply. And in fact, even today, like all of our PoE lights still do have the power component just so that you can power it on if you need to. If you didn't, if you're just run and gun, you can still power it on. So that's still there. But our first iteration of PoE lights did have all of the legacy ports just because we were uncertain if customers were willing to embrace that so new that we wanted to build a bridge.
Right.
We wanted to say, look, you can future-proof your infrastructure with lighting that supports full PoE integration. But if you're not ready for that, guess what? You can run it like the old. It worked for a little while, but then, once customers wrap their head around PoE as a whole, they've never looked back. They're like, we don't need that anymore. You don't need to build a DMX 512 loop through in our PoE lights anymore. Plus, it was adding a lot of space and bulk to the lights, and we wanted to make it lighter weight, right? Drop ceiling environment. There's only a certain amount of weight that drop ceiling can really handle. So we want to make sure we engineered we want to make sure it's still durable, still has really, aluminum chassis and all the durability that of Ikan lights. But then we can take certain components out to lessen the weight and to continue to do that.
I think that's also really client focused, right? Because you can certainly go out there with a PoE device that maybe costs a little bit less to make because you don't have to have all the other components and say, here, this is the future, do it. And there's a lot of folks who are like, I'm not ready for the future. And so by saying, look, here's a light that you can grow into. You can use it the way you've been doing it. It fits in with the rest of your kit, with all the other gear you have, still works with a Jenny. Now you can use it in that way, but when you're ready next month, next year, 10 years, it just plugs in. And I think a lot of customers and a lot of clients like the fact that you're not just saying that's the end of the road. You actually have a path to grow into the technology.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. Continue the topic of, IP workflows and IP convergence. The broadcast industry is embracing what the AV industry has embraced for many years. This helps to streamline the convergence, right? Because, we've said this, you've said this, probably I've said this before, but COVID, one thing that COVID helped in for everybody was make everybody feel comfortable getting in front of a camera. Right.
Mostly.
Mostly, right. Yeah. It's more of the normal expectation now.
Right.
And that means more corporations want, and with the way that people are cord cutting and not watching commercials anymore and consuming content through short form videos, more and more corporations realize that's where ultimately where their audiences want them to talk and want them to be connected with. And so more corporations are building a podcast studio, something like what we've built here at NAB. Right. And so now the growth in broadcast is at the corporate level now, right? No longer with the call letter television, especially as they're consolidating in mass, right? Between Nexstar and Tegna and Scripps and Sinclair. There's a lot of the consolidations that's happening. The growth is now in the corporate sector.
Right.
You guys do a lot of corporate projects. Love to hear kind of what you're seeing on your end.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It really is on the CEOs who say, well, this is going to be edited. If people don't watch it live, it's going to be edited and disseminated for corporate communications. We want to look as best we can, right? It's not just sending a memo or sending a strongly worded email or a press release. There's a visual component to this. And as a leader, you want to have that strong presence, right? And I think also a lot of us realize that during the pandemic, a lot of our community, I don't want to say I shouldn't say community fell short, but we're missing that humanity. And if we can put a face to have that connection, we want to do that. And I think that was a way that we were still holding on to what kind of made work fun, I guess, to some extent, because you can interact with those people. So we're seeing a lot of corporate communications. A lot of corporate clients are saying, we want to incorporate that. And we're also seeing in creative facilities who maybe have a lot of extra office space. And they're like, you know what? We're already editing video. Why don't we edit the audio for the podcast as well? So they're turning these offices into podcast studios. So we're seeing it kind of go across the entire industry, not just corporate, but even the traditional media market as well.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of podcast studios, you guys just put one together very recently, built one together. Please walk us through, the vision of that. And I assume you guys are using it already, right? It's already live.
We had our inaugural recording, not broadcast, our inaugural recording 2 weeks ago. So for those that don't know, Keycode Media is a reseller and integrator, and Ikan is one of the products we sell. But we also sell storage content or gear for AV, sell gear for post-production. And we have a lot of manufacturers. And we realize that there's such a deluge of marketing speak out there. We want to get what the gear really does, what it does, what it doesn't do, what it costs, how you use it. And a lot of times that gets lost in marketing speak. So if we can have manufacturers come in and then I don't pull punches and ask them questions, we can get content out there from a trusted, respectable source. So we wanted to have a room where we can have people come in and record. Now, Keycode Media, while we sell this gear and we train people on how to use it, we don't have a TD, right, technical director working at Keycode Media. So we want to have someone, if someone wants to come in and record, we want there to be a one-button press that turns all the Ikan lights on at the right temperature, right, gets the hair light just right, turns on the microphones, which are going over Dante, right, over IP, and then starts either a Ross or a TriCaster recording from each of the 3 PTZ camera angles that have already snapped into place because they're tracking the subject. So we wanted to have something in a automated fashion so we can concentrate on the message rather than worrying about, are we moving the joystick to get the camera in the right place? So that was kind of the goal for the podcast studio. And we've done now, I think 3 or 4 already. And we can have people go in, hit a button on a Stream Deck, all the cameras snap to the right preset, the lights turn on at the right preset, and they can just record without worrying about getting everything set up for each individual shoot.
Yeah, that is absolutely music to my ears. That's so cool. As an executive myself, I talk a lot about, when I talk to other executives about should they invest in a podcast studio or some sort of in-house video production, the question I get is, what am I going to get my money back? The ROI, right? The ROI becomes a question. Executives love to talk about ROI because it normalizes all the disparate things that we would have to spend our money on.
Right.
ROI for a studio, ROI for a trade show, ROI for a new piece of equipment, machine. Those are all very disparate decisions. Mm-hmm. But what normalizes it, what benchmarks it is the ROI, right? Normalizing it into a financial principle. So oftentimes when I talk to executives about should they build a studio or not, there's an opportunity cost component, right? Which is hard to quantify, right? Because if your competitors are doing, you're not, right? But that's hard to quantify. What I often focus on is if you can use the equipment every day for maybe 2, 3, 4 hours a day, regardless of what you think the ROI is, it's going to be worth your money, right? You can build a let's just say ivory tower, $500,000, $1 million studio versus, and you use it 3, 4 times a day, you've got some good return on your investment because you would be creating so much high quality content versus even if you build a $10,000 studio, but you only use it once a year. Well, you really should think twice about doing that, right? That's not the right fit. And how do you increase utilization? It's what you just said. Make it so easy that all the less technical people in your company, whether it be somebody in the sales role or in an operations role, right? Creating for them to be able to walk in and not have to be beholden to a team to do that,
Right.
but they can just empower themselves to do that. Oh boy, that's whatever ROI calculators you have, you're going to hit that benchmark because you're talking about creating so much more content and be able, and then also leveraging. We talked about Opus AI, right? That's just, that's not the end all be all, but I think that's the beginning of the possibility of being able to cut some long form content into short form content and be able to disseminate that in a way that delivers instant value without it being stuck somewhere. Because let's be honest, editing is a pain for everybody that's ever had to do it.
Coming from a post background, I can't agree with that. I have a love of telling stories visually and audibly. But I would augment what you just said in two ways.
Okay.
And one of them is, as we talked about prior to us going live, is that AI still requires a human in the loop, right?
Agree.
And when you're looking at ROI metrics, that's only the things we can tangibly measure.
Mm-hmm.
You can't measure word of mouth, right?
Sure. Yes.
So if you're looking at ROI metrics, there needs to be a human in the loop to do a gut check to say, yeah, those numbers, I see why that would make sense. But you know what? I was talking to someone the other day, and they said they saw a video we did, and they recommended us to someone that closed the deal, that we closed the deal with. That isn't something you can tangibly really measure unless you are grilling them on the phone. Who'd you talk to? How'd you learn about it? Those kinds of things. So I think there needs to be a human in the loop and a gut check for things like that. And I think that's how the ROI metrics kind of can be made to make sense, but they have to be tempered with the realities of things.
Yeah. Well said, Michael. And I absolutely agree with you. What we've seen sometimes is that as a corporation is dabbling in video for the first time, right? The decision makers look at it as an investment of equipment, but they also want to look at it as an investment in people. And oftentimes, if they have to hire somebody for the first time to be able to manage that can oftentimes be the tipping point between making a decision and not making a decision, right? So oftentimes we do hear that, well, we want our in-house staff to be able to run the equipment and to be able to operate it. And there's a learning curve. In that scenario, what I often say is you really, first you have to, if you want to just completely rely on your in-house staff, which is fine. Every corporation needs to start somewhere, right? And nobody wants to start with signing a big check for equipment and new staff on day one, right? Every corporation wants to kind of scale into it. What that for me means oftentimes is you have to identify somebody in-house that has a passion for it. If you can't identify somebody, if you're just going to punt it off on somebody who doesn't want this job, it's going to go nowhere.
Right.
But if you have somebody that has the passion and you understand what their skill sets are, there are ways that you can augment their skill sets so that they can learn into it, they can grow skills into it, but then they can also leverage the tools that are available. And so and for us as Ikan, even though we have a full production team, oftentimes we have video that are stuck because of the amount of hours it takes, right? And so even our production team is finding tools like Opus AI very, very useful for them. The fact that they were able to create these short form, basically trailers or previews of a long form content has added a lot more value. It has allowed us to deliver, content to our audiences so much quicker. There's way less friction now than there ever was before.
I think there's one little fallacy with that I think needs to be said, and that's for decades now the cost of gear has come down, but what the real cost is the employee and their experience and their talent. And trying to compare one to the other is an exercise in futility, right? So if something costs $100,000 and the person you're hiring is $50,000, okay, that makes sense. The gear, that's the important thing, right? But no, it's the person. So when the gear comes down to $1,000 and now you're paying someone $50 or even more a year, then that's incongruent. But you wouldn't have said it was incongruent if it was the other way, So there has to be that kind of realization that the tools don't define the talent, right? It's the person who's going to use those tools in the right way. for the message that's going to be generated. That being said, with the lowering cost of gear, we're also getting an explosion in functionality. So you don't have to be a cinematographer to shoot a really good talking head for your CEO talking to everyone else on a recording. You don't have to have $10,000 microphones. You can get by with things that are less expensive because the technology's progressed to a point where you're hitting that 95% quality level, and that's just fine for what you need to accomplish.
Agreed, especially with how much content is created, how quickly they are consumed and forgotten.
Yes.
Right? It really is a speed to release kind of, speed to post kind of dynamic, right? Because and with information just going stale so quickly, if you sit on a piece of information for a week, 2 weeks,
right,
you might as well just not release it at all, right? Right.
And I think a lot of folks may not realize that while we have technology that is making production easier, there's also technology to make post-production easier. We have tools that will take your transcript and you can then edit by text and it'll remove extraneous parts. Or you can look at algorithms to see, well, in this space, if videos are under 2 minutes, that's what's going to be good. Okay, make this video 2 minutes long. So there are tools out there that can make that previously long process of rough cut, review it, another cut, review it to that's good enough, put it out. And there are tools that can do that. So you don't have to have these elongated pipelines for a lot of these corporate communications.
Mm-hmm. What are technologies that are most exciting to you? What have you seen here that is most exciting?
The democratization of being able to use technology. And what I mean by that is we've always had specialized folks who have to learn specialized interfaces to accomplish specialized tasks. And I think by utilizing AI and things like MCP servers, where you can in natural language say, I want to cut this video. I don't know how to use the video editor, but when Jim stops talking, I want you to cut to Pam. Okay, that's natural language. The MCP server can then translate that into something actionable in that system. So I think we're going to start to see maybe an AI single pane of glass that you type or you speak to, and it will accomplish what you want because it's already it already has the hooks to talk to these different pieces of software, so you can operate them in natural language as opposed to having to know the key combination or clicking on the right button with your mouse.
Yes, agreed. And it would have contextual awareness of your organization.
Yes.
Right? The people using it, what your expectations are, as well as obviously the context of what technology it's currently interfacing with, to be able to pull those threads and be able to kind of automate some of those workflows in real time.
My only concern on that is just like the ROI discussion, where you can try and account for every single variable and how that plays into what the cost of something is. I think the same danger is with being able to use AI to look at every single metric, whether it's valid or not. I think there's a danger with saying that's going to make all the decisions based on all the metrics we think we're measuring correctly. That's my concern. That's, again, why we need the humans in the loop and the gut check to ensure that what AI is recommending is at least plausible, right? But not definitive.
Yeah, sure. It's the 80-20, right? Let AI get you 80% of the way there, but the last 20%, make sure a person is in there to gut check, to validate, to humanize, yes, authenticate, right, and be able to still deliver exceptional value as a finished, accomplished, piece of work, or a delivered video, or a composed project of some nature. Yeah, really well said.
I'm envisioning technologies where there are different kinds of streaming switchers, right? Whether it's a TriCast from VizRT or whether it's a Carbonite from Ross. And if I can throw a show, why should I be beholden to that one manufacturer? Just like in editing. If I can edit, it shouldn't be I can only edit on Avid because I haven't learned how to translate that to another tool. But when you start getting things like Stream Decks or buttons, right, where you can say to take buttons in the same place, whether it's on a TriCaster or whether it's on a Ross system, that Stream Deck still has taken the same place. So now you can move between systems knowing that interface is how you want it to be, and it will have the same effect in whatever environment. And that's the kind of single pane of glass, as they say, that I'm really looking forward to, because then you're really breaking down the creative barriers, because it's not just, do you know where to click? It's, I know where to click on my interface.
Well said, Michael. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I feel like we've covered a lot of things. Is there anything else we want to talk about today?
Well, I think there's no secret around around Keycode Media that if there's something that can be talked about, I will talk about it ad nauseum. So I think this is probably a good place to wrap.
Wonderful. Well, really appreciate your time. Really appreciate just getting to know you even before our segment started, just diving deep into our equal shared passions. It's been a pleasure. I hope you have a really great rest of the show, and look forward to just, getting to know you better over time.
I look forward to hitting you up after the show and picking your brain. So thank you so much for having me on.
Same here. Take care. Awesome.